Thank you for being here today. I want to extend a warm welcome to our speakers, other important figures that are accompanied us today, and thank you everyone for being here. I know it's a difficult time. Welcome to Female Genital Mutilation, FGM, or cutting in the US, a call for action. My name is Adriana Buenaventura. I'm a student here, and I'm also a fellow at the Critical Thinking Unit program of the HA Foundation and Ideas Beyond Borders. This event was conceived when I took a class last semester, and some of my classmates didn't know that FGM is happening in the US. Then I asked myself if FGM is an African problem. By the rising numbers of cases in the US, the answer looks like it's not. Then the question is, does the US pass a test in protecting its citizens against this harmful practice? We will figure it out now. I want to thank you, the organizers of this event. It's the Critical Thinking Unit event, as I mentioned. This is a program, an initiative joined by the Young Hirsi Ali Foundation and Ideas Beyond Borders. HIA Foundation is a nonprofit organization founded in 2007 by the Young Hirsi Ali, a Somali-born activist who advocates for a reformation within Islam. The HIA Foundation works to protect women from honor violence, forced marriage, genital mutilations, while advocating for freedom of speech and public debates on campuses around the country. Ayan is an important figure, and today I have the pleasure to share with you. We will have a rifle of two of her books. The book is called Infidel. It's her first book, and it's a biography that shows her life from childhood to adulthood. So don't go. The rifle will be at the end. I want to extend a warm welcome to George Sarubin, who is the senior executive of the HA Foundation. Thank you, George. Other partners of this initiative is Idea Beyond Borders, which is an organization that promotes free exchange of ideas and defends human rights through education, research, and technology. IBB was founded by Faisal Al-Mutar, an Iraqi-born award winner and human rights activist. I want to thank you especially to our sponsors. Those are the organizers, and these are our sponsors. It will be the Women and the Law program. Thank you, Sarah, for being here and all your support. As many of you know, this is the program educating women and defending our rights. Then we have the National Society of College Scholars, which is an honor society with chapters over 300 colleges, campuses around the US. They provide opportunities for students to engage in service work, prepare for their future, and mentor other high achiever students. Members have access to apply for scholarships and connect with other leaders in the education community. All the information about these organizations is outside. I also have the pleasure to be here with Angela Peabody, from the Global Women Peace Foundation, which is an organization founded on the principles of eliminating violence and injustice against women and girls. This organization supports survivors actively, proposed legislation to fight FGM, and organized the famous Walk to End FGM since 2014, and that event happened last week. We are sponsored also by the Secular Student Alliance, which is a on-campus student organization which aims to provide a secular community for students without a particular religious affiliation by creating a safe space for atheists, agnostic, free thinkers, humanists, pantheists, and other non-believers. It is my pleasure to count with the support of Actions for Human Rights, which is a student organization at American University, Washington College of Law. Her president, ARH, president is here, and they are volunteering to put this event together, so thank you very much. They bring students and faculty together to promote awareness on domestic and international human rights issues in the legal application. In addition to volunteering in the DMV area through the year, HRH hosts an alternative winter break in New Orleans, an alternative spring break in the Navajo region, so be aware of that. Finally, Hispanic American Freethinkers is also behind this event, and HAFRE serves as a resource to support all the Hispanic freethinkers in the country by teaching science, logic, and reason. Okay, we are starting now. Remember, this event is being recorded, so please, if you are making comments or anything, be sure that it will be loud, and if you are exiting the room, be careful with the noise. Now I want to introduce the speakers today. We have first Amanda Parker. She is the Senior Director and Chief Financial Officer of the AHA Foundation. Ms. Parker oversees AHA's Women's Rights Program. She develops federal and state policy proposals to protect women and girls from harmful cultural practices, recently working with Michigan to put in place the most comprehensive anti-female genital mutilation legislation in the country. She has facilitated training on honor killing, FGM, forced marriage, and child marriage for more than 600 professionals that it will be likely to encounter these cases. Also, as I mentioned, Angela Peabody is here too. She is the Executive Director and founder of the Global Women Peace Foundation, an organization founded on the principle of eliminating violence and injustice. She has a long career as a journalist, and she moved to the US, and she has been supporting the FGM community and survivors. So welcome.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay? Is the microphone picking me up? Okay, great. Thank you so much for coming today. It's a topic that is very close to my heart, and it's wonderful to see so many of you who are here to take an interest in it and to learn a little bit about it as well. And it's also terrific to have so many upcoming legal minds that are thinking about this. So I'm really grateful that all of you are here. My name is Amanda Parker, and as you heard, I'm the Senior Director for the AHA Foundation. And on your left is Dr. Jumana Nagarwala, and on your right is Dr. Attar. And the two of them, along with some others, were charged earlier this year with performing female genital mutilation on 9 girls in a clinic in Michigan. And it's a federal case that is happening now. The 9 girls were from Michigan, from Minnesota, and also from Illinois. And the reason that I point out where they were from is because I'm going to be talking a little bit more in depth about state-level anti-female genital mutilation measures that we advocate for. But the fact that they came from these 3 states is significant because at the time that these girls were allegedly cut, there was no anti-FGM legislation in the state of Michigan. However, in the state of Minnesota, a practitioner who cuts a little girl could get up to life in prison. And in Illinois at the time, a practitioner could get up to 30 years in prison for cutting a little girl. So although you can't get into the mind of the parents and the people who are involved in this case, it's possible that they were looking for a state that had less strong laws to take the girls to for this procedure. The prosecutors are estimating that there are as many as 100 girls who may have been cut by these doctors in this one clinic in Michigan over a dozen years. There are 7 counts that they, along with their co-conspirators, are being charged with, including female genital mutilation, conspiracy to commit female genital mutilation, and conspiring to travel with the intent to engage in illicit sexual conduct. There was a previous count that has been thrown out by the judge, which was conspiracy to transport a minor with the intent to engage in criminal sexual activity. And that one was thrown out because the doctor's defense team argued successfully, it seems, that the procedures did not really fall into the criminal sexual activity definition that would need to have been met for this. And I wanted to start with this case just to show you that what we're talking about is clearly happening in the United States right now. There's this case that's happening, and we're going to talk about laws and the different federal and state laws that apply to female genital mutilation in a moment, but I wanted to start with a very real case that this is happening in the United States. So, as you heard already, I oversee the women's programs at the AHA Foundation, and what we do is we work to try to end honor violence, forced marriage, female genital mutilation, and child marriage in the United States. And today we're going to be focusing on female genital mutilation, obviously. But just to give you a quick overview of our work, what we do with these different topics is we raise awareness. We talk to professionals who are likely to encounter survivors and at-risk individuals and raise awareness with individuals like yourselves. We also work to advocate for laws that better protect women and girls from these abuses in the United States. We do a little bit of research, and we also work directly with women and girls who are facing these abuses here to help them find safety. Today, I hope that when I'm finished with my presentation, all of you will come away with just a handful of main points. The first of these main points is really that this is happening here. This is something that could be happening to your neighbors, to your classmates, to your colleagues, to your friends. This is not something that is an over-there problem, which I think a lot of us in the United States, myself included, before I was in this work, really thought about this issue. This is something that could be impacting people that you love, maybe impacting people that you love and care about. So this is something that we should all be thinking about and worrying about. In addition to that, there's something that you can do about it. All of us have the opportunity to take steps to make a difference in this issue here in the United States. I'm also going to tell you a little bit about the legal landscape. That's one of the things that I work on at work, but I think it's also something that will be interesting to you as you're embarking on your law careers. So I think it's really important that we talk about specifically what female genital mutilation is, so that there's no question. And this is a cultural practice that predates all major religions. It's something that is done, typically a girl will be taken behind closed doors, her knees will be forced apart, and she'll be held down while someone cuts her genitals. And there are 4 different types defined by the World Health Organization that range from pricking, piercing, to cutting the clitoris or the tip of the clitoris or the hood of the clitoris, all the way to the most severe form, which is when basically all of the tissue from the outside that can be removed is removed, and the wound will be sewn almost completely shut so that there's only a hole remaining for menstruation and for urination. So I think it's really important to, I know, I'm sorry, some of you are eating. I should have given you a warning. But I think it's really important that we're all clear on exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about female genital mutilation. According to the World Health Organization, it reflects a deep-rooted inequality between the sexes and constitutes an extreme form of discrimination against women. Why would anyone do this? That's a question I had when I first started working in this field. Why on earth would anyone do this? And there are really a number of reasons that overlap, and families could have old wives' tales that they think that this is something that's necessary for a number of reasons within their families. Some of them think that it's their cultural tradition, that it's something that they need to do as part of their culture. Some of them think that they are removing body parts that are unclean or considered male. Some of them are doing it so they can prove that a girl is a virgin on her wedding night. Some of them do it so that she will be marriageable. This is something that kept me up a lot when I first started working in this field about how a mother could do this to her little girl or have this done to her little girl, because it's frequently the women in the families that are perpetuating this practice. And it's really important to know that this is not something that families are doing to harm their little girls. They're not trying to do something that is abusive, and it may very well be the very only single moment in a family that is abusive. It's, in an otherwise healthy and loving family. This is something that they're doing because they think it's the best thing that they can do for their daughter and for their families. It's something that will make their daughter marriageable and will ensure for her future, and also it will provide a family alliance in a lot of cases with that marriage. So it's something that's happening not because they want to hurt their daughters, but because they are trying to do the best thing that they can for their families. I think I missed a slide. I'm going to go back to it. Oh yeah, I didn't. I just missed the bottom half. Also super important is that FGM has no benefits and lifelong health and psychological consequences are associated with it. Immediately following the procedure, a girl might have severe bleeding, shock, hemorrhage, infection. There are girls that die because of this procedure. There have been some cases in the news recently of girls in Somalia who recently died after undergoing female genital mutilation. Long-term, there are a lot of complications as well. They might have difficulties with intercourse. They might have difficulties with childbirth. They may have complications including fistula. And there are also psychological complications that go along with it, including self-harm, depression, PTSD, suicidal ideation, and all of these things, the mental consequences that go along with it, and even some of the physical consequences, even in the least physically invasive forms of female genital mutilation, are possible. So our stance and the stance of the World Health Organization and all of the international organizations really that work on this issue is that it's not okay even in a less physically invasive form. Okay, going back to this. So I think this map shows a little bit about what I, in particular, thought about when I thought about female genital mutilation before I was working in this field, that it was happening overseas. And indeed, it is something that affects 200 million women and girls worldwide, which is an astounding number. But I think that even if you know that it's happening in these countries, the percentages for me were quite shocking to know that 87% of women in Somalia undergo female genital mutilation. 87% of women from Egypt undergo female genital mutilation. 74% of women in Ethiopia undergo female genital mutilation. These are incredibly high numbers. The part that I think is surprising for most people in the West is that it's also a big problem here. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention estimates that there are 513,000 women and girls in the United States who are at risk of or who have undergone female genital mutilation. I was just chatting with some colleagues about this number, and it's definitely an estimate, and it's rough, and it's got a lot of problems associated with it, but it is the best that we have in terms of trying to quantify how much of this is happening in the United States. It's kind of hard to see, but in the photo down in the bottom right-hand corner, this was a practitioner who was coming into Canada to cut little girls in Canada, and those were the tools that the practitioner had brought in with them. So they've caught practitioners coming into Canada to perform female genital mutilation on little girls there. In Europe, it's estimated that 500,000 have been cut and that another 180,000 are at risk. And even in Colombia, where Adriana is from. Where's Adriana? Oh, right here. Hi. There are indigenous communities who are known to practice female genital mutilation. So this is not something that's just happening overseas. And in fact, in the United States, there's a history of cutting girls for a number of reasons, even back into the 1930s to curb sexual desire or to get rid of hysteria and things like that. So this is not just something that was imported into the United States. We came up with this brand of abuse on our own as well. So as I mentioned, there's a federal law, and we talked about this a little bit. The case that's happening in Michigan right now is being tried under the federal law, and this makes it illegal to cut a girl, and it also makes it illegal to take a girl overseas for the procedure. Interestingly, and horrifyingly, the defense team in the Michigan case that's happening right now has put in place a constitutional challenge. They're saying that the US government did not have the authority to put in place this law in the first place, which is a very scary thing for us right now to see. And at the AHA Foundation, we submitted an amicus curiae, or friend of the court brief, I know I don't have to tell you guys what that is, to support the government's case, to say, first of all, this is a little background on female genital mutilation, but also we believe that it is totally within the government's authority to have put in place this federal law because of the Commerce Clause and because of our treaty obligations. So we are actually very excited / nervous to see what happens. This is going to be heard in court next week on November 6th. So we are waiting kind of with bated breath, and we're hoping that the judge can't imagine that he's not going to rule in the way that we think that he should, but it's something that is going to be happening imminently. So there is this federal statute which is being challenged. And in addition to that federal statute, there are 27 states, the ones that are in black. On my slide, they were blue. I don't know why they're black, but they're black. So the black states all have state anti-female genital mutilation legislation as well. And at the AHA Foundation, we work really hard with legislators to encourage them to put in place these laws. And there are a number of reasons that we do so. One of them is that it gives prosecutors and law enforcement the tools that they need really to fight these cases on a local level. Another reason is that state laws really send a message that this is not something that's acceptable here. And we have families that we work with at the AHA Foundation who might be on the fence about whether or not they're going to cut their girls, who will use harsh penalties and harsh laws as an excuse for why they won't cut their girls. And for us, that's the very best case scenario that we can see with any kind of criminalization of female genital mutilation, is that it's preventative. We don't want to use these laws. We want to see them stopping this from happening in the first place. But in addition to all of that, state laws can really fill gaps that the federal laws currently don't. We advocate for things like education and outreach with communities and professionals to try to prevent this from happening. We also advocate for provisions that make it so that a survivor can stand up for themselves in a court of law, and to extend the statute of limitations on a civil basis so that they have up until their 28th birthday, so that they're old enough to see the ramifications of what's happened to them, and they're old enough to think about whether it's something that they want to do is to take the practitioner or their families or whoever it is that they are seeing as liable for this to court, and to stand up for themselves in a court of law. Also, on a state level, we like to see states make it illegal to take a girl across state lines for the procedure. And that's something that unfortunately was not in place in Illinois nor in Minnesota for the case that's ongoing in Michigan right now. And just to give you a little bit of an idea of what's happening locally in terms of your state laws, the District of Columbia does not have an anti-female genital mutilation statute. And the numbers underneath each of the states, those are estimates from the Population Reference Bureau of how many women and girls are at risk of or who have undergone female genital mutilation in the area. So for the District of Columbia, that's 3,808 is the estimate. And again, rough estimates. Maryland has a state law that we think is pretty good, but it's not what we would actually like to see. And Delegate Miele last legislative session actually put in place or tried to pass a law that would strengthen the penalties. And he is planning to, if he's reelected, actually not reelected, he's running for senator. If he's elected as state senator, he's planning to go back and work on increasing the penalty again. And so we've been bending his ear a little bit and telling him that while you're planning to do that, we would really like for you to add an education and outreach provision, and we would also like to see you make it illegal to take a girl outside of state lines for the procedure. So he's very open to that, and I think that we're going to see that happen probably this next legislative session, as long as he is in fact elected to the Senate. So we're happy to already have a champion and working to get those things put in place. In Virginia, it's already a pretty solid law. This one was interesting though, because when it was first put in place, it was put in place as a, thank you. Yeah, it was put in place as a misdemeanor rather than as a felony. And in states where there's no law, in some cases, and it's very complicated depending on how the law is written, but in some cases they will use a different provision of aggravated assault instead of female genital mutilation if that's not one of the state laws. So they'll use aggravated assault instead. And the way that this was actually put in place was it made the penalty lesser than the aggravated assault, which maybe could have been used in its place if it hadn't been put in place in the first place. But just this last session, it was increased to be a felony. So we were happy to see that. Why should you care about any of this? And I touched on this at the beginning, but if it's not enough to know that hundreds of millions of women and girls worldwide are facing this, I hope that knowing that it's happening in our own communities and with people that we might know and people that are close to us, that knowing that, I hope it's something that is a little bit more poignant to you. This could be happening to your classmates. So for me, that's a no-brainer. And also you can do something about it. Each of you has the opportunity and the potential to do something about this. You can help raise awareness, you can educate yourselves, you can talk to your friends, and at the end of this presentation today, we're going to give you some concrete ways that you can get involved today, working with us at the AHA Foundation and helping us on the policy level. And there's also, well, I'll get into that in a minute, but you all can make a difference, and we would love to get you involved in this fight with us. And now I'm going to hand it over to Angela Peabody. I'm honored to share the stage with you today.
Thank you, Amanda. Good afternoon. I'm Angela Peabody, and I'm the Executive Director of Global Women Peace Foundation. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon. Global Women Peace Foundation, a little bit of our history. We were founded in 2010, and we were established on the basis of protecting and preventing violence and injustices against women and girls. Our mission is to empower women and girls through education to help eradicate gender-based violence as a whole, but we focus primarily on female genital mutilation. Female genital mutilation is what we focus on, and the reason why we chose FGM instead of any of the other gender-based violence issues is because we found that FGM was the least familiar in the United States. I'll tell you a little bit about our programs. We have our Wholesome Organic Relief Program, as we call it, and it entails psychological counseling, therapy. What we do is we have I think we have, according to Dr. Mishori, We have the only local support group workshop and meetings for women who have undergone FGM in the DC metro area. And we have that once a month, the third Saturday of every month. And that's part of our psychological therapy. We also have the genital restorative surgery, which we sponsor. We actually pay for the surgery for women who have undergone FGM. Physical therapy, you'll be surprised that physical therapy is definitely part of the healing process of FGM. So we include that in our Wholesome Organic Relief program. And the reason why we don't like to call it healing completely is because several of the FGM survivors have told us they never heal, they never feel healed. We help them to get past what they encountered, but we don't really heal them psychologically. Physically, yes, the surgery will heal them physically. And another of our programs is the Survivor Resettlement Program, which we started doing when we realized women were coming to us and they needed help. They needed, one woman said, I don't want to take my 8-year-old daughter back to Liberia because that's when it was done to me at 8 years old. And so we started offering help with their asylum. So we started an asylum program, and we reached out to attorneys, asking them to help us do pro bono work, offer pro bono services for our program, for the Survivor Resettlement Program. So we help women get asylum. We help them prepare for employment. We help them write cover letters to accompany their resume. We help them, assist them with preparing a proper resume to look for a job. And even when they need to relocate from Virginia to Maryland or vice versa, or to the district, we also help them with that. The Kids Reach program, we came up with that when last year in Springfield, Virginia, a lady from my church shared with me that she had attended one of my seminars at the church in 2014, and she and her daughter were standing in front of their townhouse one evening when a little girl came racing down the street, screaming, "Please help me, my father wants to cut off my private parts." She immediately recognized what the girl meant, and she and her daughter proceeded to protect the girl from the father. The father came racing down the street after the girl with a big knife in his hand, and he informed the woman that she should get out of his way because it was his culture and they do it in his country. She stood up to him and she called 911. The police arrived, Fairfax County Police, and they didn't know what FGM was. They did arrest the father, but at that time in Virginia, we didn't have a law, what Amanda mentioned. We didn't even have the misdemeanor law in place at the time. So in that case, they arrested him just for attempted malicious wounding, which carries a harsher penalty than misdemeanor. So we decided, when I heard about that, I figured knowledge, training, education is the key, and law enforcement will not know how to protect little girls from FGM if they don't know anything about FGM. So we started reaching out to local law enforcement, and to date, we have trained Loudoun County Sheriff's Department, Fairfax County Police, and Montgomery County Police in Maryland, and we are already preparing to train Alexandria as well as Arlington County. We also included in this program the Kids Reach Shield program, which is our prevention program. We also go and train school nurses because they are on the front line with these little girls. They see them every day when they come to the nurses' station. So they need to know everything about FGM. Tomorrow, I will be in Norfolk, doing a presentation to the Virginia School Nurses Association teachers training. Teachers also are on the front line with little girls. They need to know everything about FGM. So if the girl is restless and cannot sit properly in her seat because she looks like she's in pain, it's important for the teacher to know what's going on. Awareness. We raise a lot of awareness, and Adriana mentioned Walk to End FGM. 5 years ago, we started the Walk to End FGM. It has grown internationally. People are now asking if they could host it overseas in different cities overseas. So that is our biggest annual awareness raising, the Walk to End FGM. We also publish a newsletter every week and we always publish stories from survivors, stories to current events, what's happening with FGM. We do discussions, especially in our support group meetings, and we do lots of presentations whenever we are invited to do so. Advocacy and the laws, Amanda touched on everything about it, including the state. That map shows, with the exception of New Hampshire, when we did that map, the purple coloring indicate all the states that have passed laws against FGM. But this year, New Hampshire passed their laws. So now we have 27 states, including New Hampshire. And I just want to tell you a little bit about Virginia's law. As I mentioned, last year, July 1st, Virginia passed the law, but it was a misdemeanor, as Amanda mentioned, and that was not good enough for me. So I went to the state senator, Richard Black, who put forth the bill initially to the Virginia legislature, and I told him that we needed a much harsher law. I said, I know the mindset of the people who practice this, and believe me, a misdemeanor is a slap on the wrist, and that is not enough. That is not a deterrent for them. So he promised me that this year he would make sure that the law was changed. And sure enough, we made several trips to Richmond early this year, and with the help of Senator Black, we were able to get the law changed to a much harsher penalty. It carries a 20 to life penalty. It's a class 2 felony, as Amanda mentioned, and $100,000 fine. And so I was much happier with that than last year, and that law went into effect on July 1st this year. We still, and also Amanda mentioned about Maryland. Maryland does not have the vacation cutting law, but Virginia has the vacation cutting law, which means not only you are not allowed to take the girl out of the United States for the purpose of FGM, but you're not allowed to take her across state lines. So even if a Virginia resident took his or her daughter over to Maryland or to the district with the intent of having it done, he's breaking the law and he will be penalized accordingly. So we continue to work with Senator Black. There are still some things we would like to have included in the Virginia law. For example, revocation of medical license. If a doctor, like what happened in Michigan, decides to abuse his or her medical power and perform FGM on girls, then I think he or she should lose his or her license. So that's the next step that we will be pushing with Senator Black to change in Virginia. And those are our board members. I cannot do this work all by myself, so I always like to recognize them. And those are our advisors to the board. And that is it. Thank you for your attention.
So we have about 7 minutes for questions. The microphones are open if you have any questions. Come up. Wait, you will have to come here because that doesn't work.
FGM normally practiced?
Give me one second. The question was, at what age is FGM practice?
It can start from as early as infancy, depending on the culture or the community. But the most popular age range is between 7 and 15.
Any other questions? I cannot believe this. Yeah. We are recording the event, so it's better for the audio.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Minerva Diaz, and I do have one question. I know that there is campaigns with law enforcement to create awareness and train law enforcement on how to respond to the victims or potential victims, but do we have any active media, social media platform campaigns to educate teachers and the public school sectors or the private school sectors?
There are luckily quite a few advocates that are doing awareness work around the US, honestly, and there are several of us here today, actually. As far as social media, I mean, at the AHA Foundation, we certainly do a lot of work on social media and raising awareness. Specifically gearing towards teachers and FGM, no, but we do training specifically with teachers and guidance counselors and going directly into schools and conferences where there are a lot of teachers and things like that. And absolutely that working with teachers and educating teachers is a huge, important step in preventing FGM and also to supporting survivors.
Thanks so much for this presentation. I'm just wondering if you all have faced any resistance, specifically around the legislative initiatives and changes in Maryland and Virginia, and what that's looked like.
I want to take that.
In the biggest hurdle that we have really faced in any state when we are working with legislators is educating other legislators that this is something that this is necessary. There's always a learning curve that is involved in helping to get them to understand that this is something that is actually needed in their state. This is something that's happening in the United States. This is something that's locally important to them. So that's really one big hurdle. And it really depends on the state, what kind of backlash we see. I don't believe there was pushback in Maryland by any groups or by any particular legislators. I think that the main issue was really one of education. What about in Virginia? Did you have any pushback in Virginia?
Yes, we did. In Virginia, we made several trips to Richmond, and when we got to, we breezed through with the Senate committee, but when we got to the budget committee, the Senate Budget Committee, we got pushback, and they were about to just kill the bill right in front of our faces, and miraculously, one of the senators whom we didn't even on the Budget Committee, whom we didn't expect to do anything, stood up and said, I don't think we should kill this bill. This thing has no place in our society, and it survived. So yes, we do have, we get pushback all the time, but that is nothing to stop us from our campaign.
I think, Angela, I want to add on to that, makes a great point, that anytime there's funding involved, that is a much bigger hurdle in passing legislation. And in Virginia in particular, making something a felony rather than a misdemeanor was they had a mandatory budget item that it was an estimate of how much it would cost the state. So that was the reason that there was pushback there.
$50,000. At one point, I said, if I had the 50,000, I would just write them a check and say, here, take it, pass the law, please.
Hello. Is this working now? Okay. Since we see like the background of this practice, all based to cultural, social, and religious reasons, I would like to know what do you think about. I mean, like having criminalization as the only or the most important resource to finish or to end this practice. And I say this because, honestly, in my point of view, trying to put behind bars the people that is performing the practice is just a little bit. It's just a little part of the solution. This has a deep core, and it has to be attacked in a different way. And I would like to know what are the initiatives towards that big change.
That's a great question, and I think that you make a really important point, that this is something that really needs to be addressed holistically. It can't be just with penalizing people who are performing FGM, and that is another reason that I'm really thankful that the AHA Foundation is not alone, and that we've got organizations like Global Peace for Women working with us on this, and a number of others that are all kind of tackling different avenues. And there are, as Angela said, working with survivors, and there's also, educating professionals and teachers and doctors and people who are on the front lines able to help us to prevent. But one of the things at the AHA Foundation that we think about a lot is how we can use policy to have a more holistic approach, like you're talking about, and mandating on a state level that there's education and outreach with communities and with professionals who are likely to encounter survivors. And that education and outreach, particularly in other countries, we've seen that working within communities and helping to educate them about this practice and showing them that it's not something that's mandated by their religion, it's not something that is healthy for the girls, and that there are all these consequences, that there have been communities who have stopped practicing because of that. And so we really like to see the education and outreach. But as we were just talking about with funding, anytime you attach funding to a bill, that makes it harder to pass. And state legislatures are all, fighting for every single penny that they have available to them. So without funding attached to an education and outreach provision, it's something that is we're seeing people are not implementing. But we have a long way to go in this country, and there are a lot of things that we need to be doing that we're not doing in terms of preventing FGM and protecting girls. We were literally just talking before this started about how we're so far behind what's happening in the UK and other countries, and hopefully we can learn from what's happening in these other countries that are doing a better job than we are. But I think that there's improvement, and there's a network of organizations in the United States that are all working together to try to figure out how to tackle this together. So I am hopeful that we're going to be together making progress on it.
And as Amanda said when she was speaking, she called on you to share, spread the news. Word of mouth sometimes become the best advertisement or promotion. Spread the news, because you never know. It could be somebody right next door to you. I always tell people when I speak that gone are the days when immigrants came to this country destitute, where they lived isolated from you. They come now with enough money to move into your neighborhoods, and they can be living right next door to you, and you don't know. They could be performing it in their basement. And how would you know if you don't know about FGM? So spread the news with your family, talk about it with your friends, your classmates, schoolmates, and neighbors, and tell them about it. Education is the best key in helping to prevent this thing.
Just one real quick question, Amanda and Angela. Since we're in a law school, thought I would ask, are there any civil remedies? You know, you mentioned that there can be damages, wrongful death, there can be psychological and physical damages to these women later in life. Are there civil cases that you've heard of here in the United States, or are there civil remedies being put in place by legislators for FGM?
Not that I know.
So that's a great question. I haven't heard of anyone using civil remedies aside from potentially using orders of protection to help keep a girl from going overseas for the procedure or for helping to prevent FGM in the first place. This is something that we've just started thinking about in the United States, and in Michigan, they actually, as I mentioned before, talking about extending the statute of limitations on a civil level, that was the first state that actually passed a law that extended the statute of limitations on a civil level to allow for a survivor to stand up for themselves in a court of law. But we haven't actually seen that used yet.
And I know that the FBI has implemented a program where they're working at airports now to help prevent it from happening, and they're passing out pamphlets at the gates. They're actually at the gate, and if they see any suspicious activity like a woman transporting a girl, a little girl, or more than one girl, they pull her over and talk to her and let her know about the law.
I'm sorry, but that was the last question. I would like to invite to Caroline McGrother to the stage. She is my co-organizer for this event, and she brought with her this awesome, her friends, Fainez Lipenga, who has been an active member of the National Survivor Networking since 2013 and is a survivor of labor trafficking, and she uses her voice and experience to educate the community and raise awareness. I want to give a gift to my co-organizer, so thank you. I will also like Farnese to tell me a number because I'm giving away the other two books I have. So any number from 1 to 50.
I'm the last boy. I'm the last for number 5.
5. So it will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Minerva Diaz. Woohoo! Congratulations. This is Ayan Irsi Ali's first book, Infidel. Is her biography, so I hope you like it. I really did.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Also, I would like Celeste to give me the other number.
8.
8. Rachel Dazer. You?
And say if she's not here, I'll have it, please.
Okay. Thank you, Rachel. I would like to give the microphone now to Amanda, to Caroline, for a few words, and then Amanda will coordinate the community outreach. So if you have time, we want you to sign some petitions or to write a note for the survivors.
Hi, thank you everyone so much for coming. My name's Caroline McGroder, and I'm the Chair of Social Outreach for Action for Human Rights. And it's an organization at WCL, so if any of you are interested, please see me or Danielle, our president, if you're interested in joining or attending any alternative winter breaks. So I just wanted to thank again our wonderful speakers for coming and sharing their knowledge. It's very much appreciated. And I think this is a very, very important issue. So as our presenters have said, to keep this conversation going throughout our communities, throughout this school. And if you have any further questions, please feel free to come up and chat with us. So thank you so much again, and have a great day.
Don't worry, I won't take much of your time. Just if anybody, particularly people from Maryland, want to get involved in this fight with us, there are a couple of really simple ways that you can do it, because we're going to be working with, hopefully, Senator Miele in this next coming session. And over on this first table, close to the door, there are a couple of sign-in sheets. One is for if you want to help us go door to door talking to legislators, you can sign up for that, or help us to make phone calls to legislators. There's another one for if you would like to have us send a letter on your behalf, and we've got example letters there so you can see what we'd be sending. And you just need to fill in your address information so that we can send it on your behalf to your representatives. And the third thing that we have is talking points if you want to give your representatives a call in Maryland. And you can take those with you and do that whenever you want. There's a website listed so you can find who your representative is, and talking points and some tips on making it a little easier on you to make those phone calls. And if you're not from Maryland and you want to get involved, there are some boards outside where you can, or if you're from Maryland, you could do this no matter where you're from. But we are having people write notes to survivors that we're going to be sharing online through our website and probably through social media. We haven't quite figured that out yet, but we want to send some encouragement their way. So if you want to do that, we would love to have you sign those as well. And once again, thank you so much for coming today and for your interest in this. And we hope that you'll continue to be a part of the conversation, and feel free to reach out to us if you want to get involved or sign up over here. And we would love to have your support with this. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for coming, and good afternoon.